Well, Eric, getting things kicked off here this week, we've officially wrapped up August, flipped the calendar over to September. And what's been garnering a lot of attention recently is, of course, wrapping up August. We did see quite a bit of dry weather creep in, continue to see drought expansion for a lot of areas. Can you expand on that? And especially, looking in the short range, we're also looking for a little bit of a shift into some maybe some wetter weather. I know guys are going to be harvesting here soon, but trying to
Yeah.
get away from this pattern break of just drier weather for a lot of folks in the Corn Belt.
Yeah, we saw two things. One, the North Pacific got all blocked up. So a big high over low slows the pattern down. And then the second thing was we saw the Bermuda High drift off toward Africa. So the net effect was the Eastern Corn Belt, as you see in the last 7 days. I mean, most locations didn't measure a drop. I mean, it was very, very, very dry. And I'll be honest with you, Dawson, as I look at this map, I'm reminded of like our narrative from winter last year, which was like, oh, look out, Western Corn Belt. There's a 60% chance of drought. And it's been the Western Corn Belt that's been getting rains. I just talked to a colleague of mine. His name's Eric Hunt. He's over in Lincoln. He works for the University of Nebraska Lincoln. He's a contributor, by the way, to the drought monitor. So when Nebraska's drought monitor updates, Eric is one of the input sources. And he's like, this is the best late August, early September rainfall I've ever seen. And just look at the map. I mean, it tells you what's been going on. And it's not just the last week. You go back 2 weeks. This is how things look. You go back a month. That is how, August shaped up. And in Missouri, corner of Iowa, most of Illinois, except for Chicagoland, big chunks of Indiana, Kentucky, the Mid-South, Ohio, very, very, very dry. When you look at the statistics on the whole, if you're talking about Corn Belt weather, it was really only parts of South Dakota that had above average precipitation in August. When I say above average, I'm talking about ranking it all the way back to 1893. Major drought expansion, and the biggest problem I think has been in the Mid-South. That I think, even though you see the map going really into the Northeast with the driest, remember, it's relative to the climate district. So, in terms of total deficits, the Mid-South has been extremely, extremely dry, again, in terms of total deficit. So, a lot of us have got a lot of hope in what you see right here today on Tuesday as this next front starts to move its way tonight into tomorrow morning through Wisconsin, getting into northern Illinois and Iowa. See it there. This is 7 a.m. on Wednesday. And we're all hoping that this low will make its way, sticking together, bringing rain from Michigan through Indiana, Illinois, Missouri. And by the time I get into Wednesday evening, I need these rains and storms to actually be one big congruent line with relatively slow moving precipitation. Do I ever get what I want? Very rarely. So, what will need to be seen is how quickly the rain gets through, who gets what, and we'll make an assessment on total rainfall out of this front. But before I tell you much more about it, just take note of this. That would be the blue in Ontario. There is the risk of getting some snow out of this as this comes through and some pretty chilly air in parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin. We'll talk more about that in a second. But I want to show you another model since we're talking about precip first. This is the European forecast. I'm going to give you the whole country. As we play forward, a little different color scheme here. What do we have through the weekend? Well, there's light rain, a quarter of an inch, a half inch that's coming through parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, Western Illinois, Northern Missouri. Then I don't know what happened right here, but these people need to get back on the right terms with the weather because it just keeps getting missed over and over again. And I'm one of those people right here in Champaign County. We've been missed repeatedly by this rain. We're about 10 inches of deficit right now on the whole year when you include evaporation there. So it's becoming a problem. And as we go forward, the models keep doing this. They're like, oh, bring all the rain in, but not until after the next 10 days. They're always wet after the next 10 days. And we see that not manifesting itself really happening. So what I'll tell you is over the next 10 days, the best chances at staying under a half of an inch are color coded on this map. So if there's white, we expect those areas to be wet. If you see coloring, we're concerned about it being drier. And that's a whole lot of Iowa and Illinois and Indiana and Ohio and surrounding states to the west that are seeing dry conditions continue. And even though some of the models are trying to bring more rainfall in late into week two, remember that the averages of those models are not that aggressive. So if you say, well, just show me week two, I've got, drier conditions right here in the heart of the Corn Belt. So if I flip this over one more, that's the next 2 weeks put together. And even with that front sliding through right here, we're still a lot drier than average across a key part of the main corn and soybean belt. Now, Kentucky, Tennessee, better chances. Parts of Ohio, better chances. But overall, that's still a pretty dry outlook as we go forward in this forecast. Now, I said drier, not dry. Okay, so let me be clear. There'll be some rain. It's just not, as much to offset the dryness we've seen earlier. But as I mentioned, it's going to get cool, and what a swing, right? This is what the last 10 days of August look like, and the start of September. Where I live, this is now the third coldest end of August on record. And our records go back to 1893, while Washington State has been just smoked out. I'm literally with wildfires and tremendous amount of heat up and down the West Coast. That's what that block pattern does. What we're concerned about is shown right here. This would be 7 a.m. on Thursday morning. This is after the front. In fact, you can see the front. It's right into here. And we've got overnight lows that are going to be in the 30s across a big section of the country here in the upper Midwest. And wherever you see that hard color break, that's where we have the model putting down a frost. Now, frost, to be honest, is it early? Yes. Is it concerning? For most, I would say no. If you want to do damage, we've got to have 3, 4, 5 hours of 30 or 29 or 28. And what'll likely happen is this will just touch frost just before the sun rises. And I want to know if it's even possible. Because in order to have that happen here, we can't have any moisture. And so if it rains into that area, that's going to reduce the risk of being frost. Now, could it get to 35? Oh, yeah, which is cold. But we care a lot about that delineation at 32. It's important. But the cold weather, it doesn't last long. I mean, look at this. That's your next 5 days. As we go out to day 5 through 10, start to shove it east. Day 10 through 15, there's mild air that comes back into this pattern. And so we can't forget that we still have more late summer weather coming through here. I will say this, because of how cold the end of August has been and the start of September will be, and we have this cold front coming through, I'm getting a lot of folks asking me about the correlations between now and 1974, because we had a major early frost. Dawson was before both you and I were born, but there's a lot of farmers that talk about it. And was the pattern similar? Yes. But the biggest difference is how much heat we've got in the North Pacific and North Atlantic Ocean temperatures this year versus 1974. So just an interesting tidbit there.
Yeah, I mean, we're coming off of the back of what the USDA was going to say be was a great crop too, and it seems like they've just been a lot of weather that's been thrown at a lot of these areas too, with a lot of this continuing dryness throughout August. So I mean, we're at the period to where it seems like a lot of what we see is what we're going to get, even if we get some rains here moving forward before harvest.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, most growers I know would like a little bit more rain before harvest,
Yeah.
and then a couple of dry weeks. But it's been so dry here in Champaign County. I got a guy that's combining 110-day corn just down the road.
Yeah.
And he wasn't pulling it off with the hopes of drying it down. It was just dry. It looked ready. It looked like it typically looks in October. I will also tell you this, the dryness here, we're running a program at Nutrien called HD Insights, where we're using aircraft measurements to try to assess a lot of things about the fields. And it's running over a pilot program over in Indiana. And this August dryness dropped their yield forecast by 5 bushel on soybeans. So we were looking at for the pilot acres in this, a
Mhm.
70 bushel average, and we're down on to 65 just because of what you see here. So this is impactful for both big crops we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. We're starting to see some stuff from USDA on the weekly reports as well that, crop maturity might be happening a little bit sooner for some areas too with this lingering dryness. But kind of moving on to the long range side of things, I mean, we're getting to the period of, again, harvest season, looking again towards those Mississippi waterways. Again, I know you wanted to look at those too. Kind of what are we looking at for the long range as we're again looking through this transitional period ahead of the harvest season?
Most models are dry, like the one that you see here. This is the GFS extended looking out until October 2nd, so those next 30 days. There will be rain in here. It's not going to be bone dry. The colors sometimes, boy, they make it look like there's nothing coming. What I'm really curious about is the second half of the hurricane season going to be active. I mean, we saw tropical systems in the front half. We're up to the letter F. But the big one, like Aaron, well, it stayed out to open ocean. And so, will there be something coming out of the Gulf at some point? Look how aggressive the models are on being wet. And if something comes out and starts to work its way up into here, it could be a game changer. Not for the good, to be honest, for some folks. Now, we want the rain to stop the drought scenario, but do we want it at this time of year? The other big factor is going into fall. I just kind of put together a graphic summarizing the ocean temperature pattern, which helps us understand La Nina. We're technically in La Nina already, according to ocean temperature and trade wind behavior. Um, 4 out of the last 5 falls have been La Nina falls. Only 2023 was not. That fall was not. And 4 out of the last 5 falls, we were really dry throughout the Mississippi Basin. The big wild card is how warm the North Pacific is right now. Japan just broke an all-time record for August temperatures, but the surrounding ocean was 10 degrees Celsius warmer than normal around Japan. Is that going to mess with the jet stream as it comes across the northern hemisphere? These are questions we're trying to answer every day. But the longer range models all look something like this. And I'm going to be honest with you, I think we need to take the equal chances for what it really is. So, what that means is it doesn't mean there's a good chance you're going to be average. It just means that there's no signal to tell you which side of average you're going to be on. So, I think there's some uncertainty about fall, maybe similar to what we saw in spring, where the pattern did not pan out the way that the models suggested it would. The question is, are we going to go on the drier side or the average side? We're certainly on the drier side right now. But one tropical system or a returning Bermuda high could kick off a major severe weather outbreak at the end of September. That's happened, and I don't think any of us know whether it's going to happen or not. I'll say this, I've never heard more people, it feels like this year, pray for a weak hurricane to come up the Mississippi right now because the water levels at Memphis, I mean, look at this. We're 0.22 feet below low stage. In April, whoops, that was a bad arrow. April, right there, we were 38 feet above low stage. So the river has dropped nearly 40 feet since summer. And now we're going to start to question whether or not we have problems with barge traffic going later in the season. So that's still ahead of us, too.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be watching a lot of that moving forward. One thing quickly too on lastly here, moving towards South America,
Yeah.
still, we've kicked off the last couple of weeks talking about South America with some mixed signals. What are you seeing this week in terms of any developments that we might expect here moving forward?
Yeah, I personally have been siding a bit more with the GFS lately. Over the next 10 days or so, very wet in southern Brazil, like Rio Grande do Sul. They have gotten permission to plant early in Paraná, which is here, and they might get enough rain in the southern part of Paraná to do that. But if you're waiting on rains farther to the north, you're waiting on 2 inches or so. I don't see that coming by September 10th. And the models will always try to fill it in late in the forecast. But even in this case, they're not doing a whole lot of that right in through here, meaning any sort of really early planting in like Mato Grosso doesn't seem to be on the cards. But you know as well as I do, I'll write it on here. We need to worry about November 1. How much of the crop is planted by November 1st? That will determine what's going on with their crop counter throughout the rest of the year. And most models have been backing off on the rainfall. This is the newest from the European model. It was super wet early. Remember, I said, hey, look how wet it is. And I'm like, but don't, just be careful. It's actually come back into better alignment with the GFS extended, which now looks like this. I personally think that this model's probably got the better handle on it because I don't have any evidence to say that that monsoonal circulation around the high pressure is going to just funnel a bunch of moisture in. So I would say maybe side a bit more with the later onset of the monsoon. But Dawson, it's the question you have to ask is the monsoon here by October 15th? That's what's critical. So all of the early September discussion, most people are like, I don't care. Is it going by the middle of October?
Yeah, we know that they can easily cover some ground
Yeah.
when given the opportunity. So I mean, Argentina was able to do that this past planting season for their wheat crop. They kept getting rain, so they kept planting more wheat. So it'd be
Yeah.
interesting to see how that shapes up for Brazil this year for when they're starting their new crop seasons. But yeah, definitely a lot of things to look forward to in terms of just seeing how things shape out with this weather, especially ahead of harvest. Going to be praying for rain for those that are looking for it. But in terms of what we can see on a weekly basis, we always appreciate your insights, Eric, and have a great rest of your week.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Dawson.